Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about medical wearables and how these devices have taken a stronger place in our healthcare practices and how we can help and support to get them taking an even stronger place in the near future. Before we start, I would like to show just a quick drawing, which is a sketch which is from the 15th century and which is the oldest description of a device made to measure our activity. It's a pedometer, which was first ever described and designed by Leonardo da Vinci at the 15th century. And as we can see, it's a sketch of a wheeled device which he designed to count the daily step made by a marching Roman soldier. So in a sense, the idea of and the desire to monitor the body and its activity is by no means new. Then it took about 500 years to get a new system, which is known as the famous 10,000 steps a day from Dr. Iwao Hoya. And that was the first system really as a medical wearable for healthcare. Then only 35 years later, we came to the modern age of medical wearables with the continuous glucose monitoring systems, known also as the CGM, and showing the acceleration in development of this new system, but also the acceleration of needs for the medical wearables. So my name is Alex Joseph. I work at Linxens as a new venture healthcare director, and I will have the pleasure to be with you for this webinar. At the end of the presentation, there will be a very short poll and our live Q&A. At any time, feel free to ask your questions through the Q&A button you have at the bottom of the Zoom window, or at the end of this webinar, we will have the pleasure to answer your live questions. So going back to this CGM as a starting point for the wearable. So in 1999, Medtronic launched the first wearable ever for glucose monitoring. And as we can see, there hasn't been big improvements considering the launch in 2006 from Dexcom and 2008 of Abbott. Basically, there's been an increase in the battery as well as the biosensor for having a longer duration of the system, a longer measurement over the time. But the comfort and the connectivity, which has slightly improved, we can see the design remained the same more or less, and the system didn't really change over the 20 past years. And if we focus on most of monitoring device we have today, so here is a kind of what we get. There's a lot of cables, lack of connectivity, and thus it doesn't produce a very good patient experience. Clearly, it's not suitable for home use. I mean, this is not a system you can take home and have a continuous monitoring. And because there is this lack of mobility, it means also it's not necessarily suitable for every patient or every disease you would like to monitor. Another issue to consider when developing new medical devices, of course, is the time to the market. So considering the moment we start working on the technology, the time we start developing the product itself to the moment we're able to launch and have a commercial offer, there is usually between 3 to 7 years of work, of development, and depending on the IVD status, if it's a class 1, 2, or 3, it might take even longer. And it's important to initiate the project as early as possible, because then you know the project development is going to take long and with a high risk of failure and high cost engaged. So if we take a look at what is required for these medical wearables, and we can have the example of the CGM we saw before, but it could be for heart monitoring, brain monitoring, sleep analysis, anything else. Usually it starts with biosensors. Biosensors which would be able to capture biological signals or physiological signals from the body. To ensure the biosensor is maintained in its right position for the proper measurement, you would need an adhesive, a specific biocompatible adhesive, which would be specific to depending where in the body you place it, but also for how long you need the wearable or the smart patch to stick to the skin for the measurement. And since it may be on part of the body which you move, I mean, the skin being flexible, the wearable itself ideally requires to be flexible to follow the body moves. And finally, one of the problems we mentioned earlier, the fact you have all these wires, the cables connecting the different patch of the wearable, but also to the communication systems, makes it unsuitable and uncomfortable. So unsuitable for home use, but also uncomfortable. The fact we have more connectivity in the device itself, connected to cloud-based solutions, bring more comfort, but also more capacity for data analytics, and facilitate both the life of the patient and the life of the clinicians by facilitating the data collection and data analysis. So all the tools we have today need a combination of these features for an ideal stick-to-skin wearable device. And that's basically what we do at Linxens. So as a CDMO, we connect the requirements to the solution. So by listening, designing based on the expected features, making prototype and testing up to the mass volume production, it's really the assembly of these different competencies, of these different technology, in order to satisfy both the clinicians and the patients within control cost to reach expected outcome. So we need to combine specifically the biosensors, the stick-to-skin wearables, and the authentication to make sure you are monitoring the right patient for the right disease at the right time. And the aim to find a solution to make development easier and faster, we have been working on a specific platform for this. So to make it suitable, we looked at what's not working or where are the gaps. So basically, there was a need for more contact lead, possibly. Then also a system that is suitable to grow with the future. We've seen an acceleration in the development, an acceleration in the fact there is more disease to be monitored. There is more part of the body where we want to capture data. So the system should be flexible to adapt to the future needs. Then also getting rid of all the spring holes, the port, the connectors, like the mini or micro USB connectors, first to control the cost, but also to avoiding the holes, because from patient to patient, when you reuse the wearable, of course, you need disinfection in some cases. So holes are not making this suitable. Then, of course, the cost control. If you want to spread your platform, if you want to spread a device that is accessible to everyone in the world, you need a proper control over the development. And finally, IP67 device, just because when you start wearing your device for a day or for a week or two, of course, people may need to take their shower, they might want to have a normal life, and they shouldn't be affected by any restriction on the device, from flexibility, from water resistance, or anything else. And something to keep in mind is the selected materials. They, of course, need to stick to the skin, but they also need to stick to each other's, because you have a complex assembly, we'll see later, between diverse material that needs to stick together and keep the flexibility and the resistance. And every time you focus on a different sensing, capturing different type of data, or placing your wearable in a different position on the body, then it means it's a totally different product, because the flexibility would be different, the skin reaction would be different, the data you want to capture, so the biosensors are different, and it's a combination of all this which make your wearable pretty unique. And the question why it is important, or what are the benefits of the stick-to-skin wearables versus armband wearables, for example. We need to keep in mind that with stick-to-skin wearables, patient gets first an extra comfort, because of course, I just mentioned, those wearables are flexible. So it's much comfortable to place anywhere in the body, and the fact it's just follow the curvature of the body. Then because you get this connectivity part, you get free move. So people are very at ease to get a patch anywhere on the arm. You can see it could be on the back, on the chest, and just live the normal life while the patch is collecting the data. Then it's safer in terms of clinical aspects. The fact the wearable stick to a specific location on the body it means also it maintains a full contact for the biosensors. So the measurement is much more accurate, while when you have an armband-based wearable, you might have some disconnection and changes in position, which might create interference. And then the versatility. Versatility because it can be placed in pretty much any position in the body, on the face, on the back, on the legs, on the chest. It's just a matter of design and making sure you select the right materials for this. So with all of this input combined and some years of development, Nile, a company based in Sweden, which has just been acquired by Linksense in 2022, they have developed a platform called PhysioPatch, you can see here. This platform is meant to reduce the time and the cost of development of medical wearable without taking away the flexibility and the scalability. So it's of course flexible. You can see here, it's totally flexible. It could be invisible. It's scalable in terms of design, in terms of size, in terms of adhesive. The one I have in hand is made to stand for 2 weeks on the skin. It is IP67, so the electronics can be plugged and being water resistant, so no problem to take the shower and make measurement for a week if needed. And you can have different sensors, measuring heart, brain temperatures, whatever is needed. It's just a matter of design. So the aim is just to help support and speed up development with a system which is predefined, a platform that just helps to accelerate development and make easier the combination of future wearables. And just to show, here's a way we can combine different materials together. This patch is a combination of several biosensors, communication tool, plastics, adhesive, electronics. And it's a combination of all these different layers that makes a complex assembly into a simple product that can just stick to the skin of the patient for whatever time and collect the data. And as I mentioned, so Nile did these developments and was acquired by Linksense in 2022. And that was a combination of the strengths of Nile with the industrial power of Linksense to bring benefit for the partners, to rely on a robust technology proven in medical care, and teams that have both a solid expertise in medical device as well as in mass volume production. We have millions of different components, electrochemical sensors, already medical wearables or RFID labels. So we have now the expertise to combine all these elements into the wearables of the future. And as we can see here, the question is where that comes, such industrial capacity, considering that Linksense, since almost 4 decades, is the leader in the manufacturing of microconnectors and the payment cards, for the payment cards as well as for the RFID antennas. So Linksense developed a leadership position in manufacturing those microconnectors, which are metal-based, as well as RFID antennas, which have been transported more than a decade ago into healthcare applications with the biosensors and the communication tool for leading the connected health. And such capacity appears today definitely needed, considering in 2019, 722 million wearables have been sold. This year, 2023, it is expected to sell 1 billion wearables around the world. So it means it's a fast-growing market, which is highly demanding. And looking at the value these tools bring to everyone, it is quite clear why there is such a success, so much demand for wearables, and especially those types of wearables. First, it's the continuous and remote monitoring. So continuous monitoring and remote monitoring, they lead specifically to real-time data analysis. The fact you are able to have not the data collected at one point of the day or one point of the week, and that just give a picture, but then getting the data collected continuously gives you movies about the behavior of your body and the physiology of the patient. And these two features, they lead to two very important points for clinicians: the early detection and the personalized medicine. With early detection, it's critical to reduce, it is very critical to reduce the burden of specific disease, because the earliest you detect, the earliest you can treat and manage a disease, whatever it is, the better the outcome is for the patient, and it lowers the cost. It's much cheaper to treat early whatever disease than to treat late. For personalized medicine, the fact you have continuous data about a patient, you can have an adjusted management, an adjusted treatment also, to make sure it's appropriate for the disease and for this patient, making the treatment or the management much more efficient. And combined with the early detection and the personalized medicine, you get a much more cost-effective management of whatever disease it is. It's specifically appropriate, we'll say, for the chronic disease, where you need those repeated testing. And in addition, of course, for the patients, it's much more convenient because it's quite easy, the data collection being automated. They don't have to do anything. The system works for them. Looking at the field of applications, that's pretty wide as well. These are just few examples, considering where there is a higher value for the stick-to-skin wearables. You have the chronic diseases and the remote patient monitoring, just because these patients usually, they need regular monitoring, regular testing of different vital signs, which is very time consuming, both for the patients and for the healthcare workers. And also it may require the patients to go to hospital for this analysis, or to go to visit a specialist. And that's what everyone wants to get rid of, just to go for a hospital when it's urgent, and just for monitoring when the data could be collected remotely. We have also, so specifically for the cardiopathies as an example, for the heart monitoring, you have this wound management that is very time consuming for the healthcare workers, and a lot of improvements are done in this segment. But also typically the sleep analysis, where I showed the picture just before in the presentation, where you have all these cables, which makes very uncomfortable and inconvenient. And more people suffer for sleep problems. So these patch, which can be applied and used at home, makes the life much easier and much more convenient for the clinicians and the patients. And now when we think what the future could look like, so we are already able to design at the end wearables, medical wearables that are flexible, that have different type of sensors and somehow connectivity. It's usually some improvements and making, let's say, bringing more complexity into simple tools. So first is the stretchability, the fact you increase the stretchability of your wearables, make them more comfortable for the patient, because of course the skin being stretched, and you want this wearable to follow strictly the body moves if you have to wear those for a long time. That's one part, but also having wearables that are stretchable means you can incorporate them in any kind of cloth, making them even more invisible. The second is a multi-sensing. So today we are able to measure heart, brain activity, temperature, pressure, pH, or even biological molecule from those patch. Is the fact we will be more and more able to combine those measurements into a single device. Today, for many of those, you need different devices located in different parts of the body. And more with the improvement done on the sensor side, as well on the data analytics and treatment, it will be more and more possible to combine more data capture in a single medical device. So it will make the last part, which is the connectivity, the fact that these data from different sources, which are totally different, having the pH, the temperature, and the heart activity all together are totally different data, but combined with a cloud-based analysis, it can lead to a more personalized and predictive medicine, to be more efficient and more effective from a patient and clinical point of view. So now that's the end of the presentation. The question is really about what project you have in mind, what is the challenge you are trying to solve, you saw that medical wearables could bring an answer to many problems we are facing with existing medical device. It can be just an improvement, it can be a resolution of existing problems, and definitely they bring solutions to current problems that are going to increase when we go back to cardiopathies, to other chronic disease like diabetes or neural analysis when there is a brain monitoring required. All of these different applications and many more could be partly answered through these medical wearables. Thank you, everyone. We'll have now a brief poll, and right after we'll go through your possible questions. So I remind that you can ask your question through the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. Okay, we'll give it 10 more seconds for the poll. Okay. Last question, last answer. Okay, let's end the poll here and move to the Q&A. So just give me a minute. I read the question in terms of adhesive for wearable devices. What do you think is currently needed in the market for better enabled wearable devices? What are the current gaps in available adhesive materials? Good questions. So there are a lot of challenges with the current adhesive. Doesn't mean they are bad. They do the job very well. It's more considering the way they are used for the patients, and especially, as I mentioned, more and more, especially when we go to the chronic diseases, patients need to wear for a long period those medical wearables. If we take typically the cardiopathies, you would like those wearables to be worn for at least 1 week, ideally 2 weeks. But if you keep a patch for 2 weeks, it means the adhesive is very strong. So first, need to make sure they are biocompatible, they don't cause skin injury, they don't cause any allergy, which is today okay. But the problem is they cause irritation because of the time you wear those. So you need to find the right balance, and I think that's where partly you need, there are improvement possibly, is in terms of comfort when you put in and remove the adhesive, especially when it has to be worn for a long period. I think it's mainly this. There are some improvement also, going back to the question, in terms of stretchability, because when you build up the wearables, there are some heat treatments which are affecting, of course, the materials, including the adhesive. So the stretchability and the comfort when you have to stick away and stick in your wearables are the two parts to be improved. So there is another answer. So what are the main applications that you have developed? So as I mentioned, LinkSense and Nilo before the acquisition, we are a CDMO. So we go develop the solutions based on expected features and input from the partners for them. So we have been active in very different segments. I would say the main segment we are present and where we have a recognition, a leadership, it's definitely the monitoring of cardiopathies. That's also where there is a higher demand due to the medical need and the gap in terms of addressing this. We know there will be more and more demand for cardiopathies monitoring, but that's where we have a leadership. Then there's been very diverse application in reproductive health, in sports, in cosmetics. So I would say the limitation is not the application. The limitation is more that the material or the technology exists today. Okay. Then another question, can we design from scratch a new stick-to-skin wearables or have to use your PhysioPatch platform? Good question. So it can be designed from scratch. The PhysioPatch platform is a support, a help to get faster in terms of development. So because you have a pre-designed platform, which can be made with a different design, different adhesive. I said this one is made for 2 weeks. Maybe you need the adhesive to work for 1 day. So we don't need to use the same adhesive. This one has 4 sensors. You might need 8, you might need 2. So it's just accelerating because we can adjust this one to your project. We don't need to start from scratch. But in case it's a totally different application, in case you want to start from scratch because you already have made some design or you have specific expectations, it is totally possible to have a totally new project. Then, of course, as we start from zero, it just takes normal time of development, depending on the technological challenge and the requirements of the market. So that's just a matter. But otherwise, our teams can make fully customizable design, prototyping, and testing. And to answer another question, no, we don't sell wearables on our own. We manufacture, develop for our partners. Another question, what type of biomarkers, metabolites, or hormone can be measured? For which biomarkers has feasibility been demonstrated? Right. Currently, most of the experiments we have are for the sweat analysis. So of course, the biomarkers to be measured are to be measured on fluids. So either you stay on the skin, so with a stick-to-skin wearable, and then the measure is done on the sweat. Then which metabolite can be measured? It's pretty diverse. It could be ions, it could be some hormones. Just need to make sure you have a full correlation between the level of the analyte or the hormone you have on the sweat compared to the level you would have on the blood or serum or plasma, whatever is done normally. Because some of them you might find them in the sweat, but you don't have a correlation, and that is a challenge. The other part, when you do measure on the sweat, everyone is different, everyone sweats differently, and you wouldn't test anywhere on the body, of course. So the point is to measure as well how much the person is sweating. So you need the combination, how much the person is sweating and measuring your metabolite. Then for intradermal patch, you will need to use microneedle. So to go and let's say collect those internally. So you have the possibility of using microneedles, could be an enzymatic reaction for the detection. Or then if you go to the third stage, which is typically what we have for the CGM devices, the one I showed at the beginning, you have really a needle that goes into the skin to measure the glucose rate. So you have the 3 parts. So if you go straight with a needle to measure into the skin, you can measure basically anything, but of course means it's a different class from IVD. It's a different development. Typically a sensor that goes on the skin that doesn't go into the body is quite simpler. We do also those sensors that go in the body. It's much more challenging, or let's say sensitive in a sense. You need to make sure it's safe for the patients, because if you leave the sensor biosensor for a week or for 2 weeks, you need to make sure the sensor is stable over the 2 weeks and is not harming the patients. That's just the difference. So those like CGM sensors, you can measure basically anything. The more you go on the skin and you stay at the level of the skin, it's more a matter of correlation between the sweat and the blood levels. Ions works well for the hormones. We don't have a lot of experience. We didn't have a lot of requests, in fact, on that ones. But if there is any request, happy to test. Mm. Another question, last question. Do you manufacture the raw material or do you only assemble? Good point. We do manufacture some of the components. So as said, today, what we propose is a combination of what Nilo was doing up to last year and what LeanSense is doing historically. So LeanSense historically is manufacturing biosensors, different type of electrochemical sensors, and RFID antennas. That's what we designed specifically and we manufactured on mass volume production. Neil initially is what we call a converter, assembling materials and having the expertise of knowing what material to use and how to design the wearable and the patch for a specific medical use, really oriented 100% medical healthcare applications. Now we have acquired Nile, we have these capacities of designing, manufacturing some of the raw components and having this converting capacity up to the finished goods for developing and manufacturing a specific medical wearable. Good. If there is no more question, we will end here the webinar. I thank you everyone for your participation. I thank you everyone for the time you've taken to listen to this webinar. And I wish you all a very pleasant day and I hope to see you soon, and feel free to contact us if you happen to have any other additional question later on. Thank you very much and have a good day.